The wind howled through the deserted streets of Darkwood, carrying with it a chill that cut to the bone. The town, long abandoned by all but the most determined residents, held secrets in its crumbling buildings and overgrown parks. But it was the graveyard of shadows that held the darkest secret of all. A place whispered about in fearful tones, where shadows seemed to have a life of their own. Tonight, the shadows would stir, and Darkwood's long-buried past would come to light. Emily Green never imagined she would find herself in Darkwood, inheriting her grandmother's old house. As she pulled up to the Victorian mansion on the edge of town, its imposing presence loomed over her, casting long shadows in the fading daylight. The house was a mix of intricate woodwork and stone, with ivy creeping up its sides, giving it an eerie, almost sentient appearance. The townsfolk had warned her about the house and the graveyard nearby, but Emily dismissed their superstitions. She was a rational person, a scientist by trade, and didn't believe in ghosts or curses. But as she stepped inside the house, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Among her grandmother's belongings, Emily found an old, leather-bound book on the mantelpiece. Its pages were yellowed with age, and the title read, "The Curse of the Graveyard of Shadows." As she opened it, the first page bore a chilling warning: heed this book's advice. Do not enter the graveyard after dark. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily visited the local library the next day. The librarian, Mrs. Thompson, was a stern, elderly woman who seemed out of place in the dusty old building. When Emily mentioned the graveyard, Mrs. Thompson's eyes widened with fear. "That place is cursed, child," she said, her voice trembling. "Stay away from it, especially at night. Many who have gone there never returned." But Emily's curiosity was insatiable. She spent hours poring over old records and newspapers, uncovering stories of strange occurrences and disappearances linked to the graveyard. Each tale was more chilling than the last, and all pointed to one name: Alistair, a sorcerer who had lived centuries ago and was buried in the graveyard of shadows. That evening, Emily shared her discoveries with her new friends, Mark and Lisa, at the local diner. Mark was a tall, athletic man with a skeptical mind, while Lisa was a petite woman with a fascination for the paranormal. They listened intently as Emily recounted the eerie tales. "Let's check it out," Mark suggested, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "It's just a graveyard. What's the worst that could happen?" Lisa hesitated but agreed, her curiosity piqued by Emily's stories. They decided to visit the graveyard at midnight, despite Mrs. Thompson's warning echoing in their minds. As the clock struck midnight, the three friends stood at the entrance of the graveyard of shadows. The iron gates creaked open, revealing a maze of tombstones and crypts bathed in moonlight. A thick fog rolled in, adding to the sinister atmosphere. They ventured deeper into the graveyard, their flashlights casting long, eerie shadows. The air grew colder with each step, and the silence was oppressive. Suddenly, they heard a low growl. Mark and Lisa froze, but Emily urged them to keep moving. Near an ancient crypt, they saw a figure standing in the shadows. It was a tall man, dressed in a black cloak, his eyes piercing through the darkness. "Leave this place," he commanded in a deep, gravelly voice. "You do not belong here." The figure introduced himself as Thomas, the guardian of the graveyard. He explained that his family had been tasked with protecting the graveyard for generations, ensuring that the restless spirits within remained bound. "Alistair's dark magic binds them here," Thomas said. "His spirit still lingers, seeking to escape and wreak havoc on the world." Despite Thomas's warnings, Emily was determined to explore further. She convinced Mark and Lisa to stay with Thomas while she ventured deeper into the graveyard. Emily's heart pounded as she walked among the tombstones. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding. She heard a whisper, her name carried on the wind. Turning, she saw a ghostly figure of a young woman with sorrowful eyes. "Help me," the ghost pleaded. "I am trapped here, and I cannot find peace." The ghost led Emily to an old, crumbling crypt. Inside, she found a hidden passage leading to an underground chamber filled with ancient artifacts and symbols of dark magic. In the center of the room was a large, ornate coffin. "This is Alistair's tomb," the ghost said. "You must destroy it to break the curse." With trembling hands, Emily opened the coffin. Inside were the skeletal remains of Alistair, clutching a black, leather-bound book. As she reached for the book, a cold hand grabbed her wrist. Alistair's spirit had awakened. Alistair's spirit rose from the coffin, his eyes burning with anger. Emily tried to pull away, but his grip was too strong. Just then, Thomas burst into the chamber, holding a silver dagger. "Emily, take this," he shouted, tossing her the dagger. "It's the only way to defeat him." Emily caught the dagger and plunged it into Alistair's chest. A blinding light filled the chamber, and Alistair's spirit let out a blood-curdling scream. The ground shook, and the tomb began to collapse. "Run!" Thomas yelled. Emily and Thomas raced out of the crypt as it crumbled behind them. Back in the graveyard, Emily watched as the tombstones began to glow with a soft blue light. The spirits of the dead were finally at peace. Thomas explained that Alistair's dark magic had bound their souls to the graveyard, but with his defeat, they were free. As dawn broke, Emily, Mark, and Lisa stood at the entrance of the graveyard, watching the first rays of sunlight pierce through the fog. They had faced their fears and uncovered the truth behind the graveyard of shadows. In the days that followed, Emily delved deeper into the history of Darkwood. She uncovered stories of missing children, mysterious deaths, and inexplicable events that had plagued the town for centuries. Each incident was linked to the graveyard and to Alistair's dark influence. Emily met with survivors and descendants of those affected, piecing together a tapestry of horror that spanned generations. She learned that Alistair had been a powerful sorcerer who sought to control life and death. His experiments with dark magic had drawn the attention of the townsfolk, leading to his execution and burial in the graveyard. Despite Alistair's defeat, Emily knew that his legacy of darkness lingered. She discovered that Alistair had left behind a series of journals detailing his experiments and rituals. These journals were hidden in various locations around Darkwood, and Emily was determined to find them all. With Mark and Lisa's help, Emily embarked on a quest to uncover Alistair's journals. Each journal provided new insights into his dark magic and revealed the extent of his influence over the town. They found evidence of secret cults, hidden chambers, and forgotten rituals that had been performed in Alistair's name. As Emily and her friends delved deeper, they uncovered the existence of a secret cult that worshipped Alistair. The cult believed that Alistair's power could be harnessed and used to achieve immortality. They had been performing rituals in the graveyard, attempting to resurrect their dark master. The cult members were ruthless and would stop at nothing to achieve their goals. Emily and her friends found themselves in constant danger, pursued by shadowy figures and mysterious forces. But they pressed on, determined to put an end to the cult's activities. The climax of their investigation came on a stormy night when they discovered the cult's hidden lair deep within the graveyard. The lair was filled with dark artifacts and symbols, and at its center was an altar dedicated to Alistair. Emily, Mark, Lisa, and Thomas confronted the cult members in a fierce battle. The cult's leader, a man named Victor, was a formidable opponent, wielding dark magic learned from Alistair's journals. But Emily, armed with Thomas's silver dagger and her newfound knowledge, fought bravely. In the heat of the battle, Emily managed to destroy the altar, breaking the cult's connection to Alistair. A powerful explosion rocked the graveyard, sending shockwaves through the air. The cult members were defeated, and the threat of Alistair's resurrection was finally ended. With the cult defeated and the graveyard at peace, Emily decided to stay in Darkwood. She became the new guardian of the graveyard, following in Thomas's footsteps. She vowed to protect the town from any future threats and to ensure that the spirits of the dead remained at peace. Years passed, and Darkwood slowly began to recover from its dark past. The town flourished, its streets filled with life and laughter. But Emily knew that the Graveyard of Shadows would always hold its secrets, waiting for the next brave soul to uncover them. Emily's story became a legend in Darkwood, a tale of courage and determination that was passed down through generations. She continued to watch over the graveyard, ensuring that the spirits of the dead remained at peace. And though the shadows still whispered in the night, Emily was no longer afraid. She had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, a beacon of light in a town that had once been shrouded in shadow.